Hey Nines, as promised, here is the test solutions. So this was test 2, linear relations. So the first question, Louisa chooses a cell phone plan that charges a flat fee of $20 per month and 25 cents for each text messages that are sent. So which equation best represents the cost of the cell phone plan? C, in dollars, where N is the number of text messages sent. So if N is the number of text messages sent, and she gets charged 25 cents for each text message sent, then it makes sense that she gets charged 25 cents for each text message sent plus that $20, which is the flat fee. So that answer would be D. Number 2, the graph below represents the cost to belong to a gym. So we need to know which equation represents the graph. So we need to know the slope and we need to know the y-intercept. So if we take a look here at where the graph, where the line crosses the y-axis, it's halfway between 0 and 200. So that's going to be at 100. So my y-intercept then is going to be 100. If I now try and figure out my slope, I know that my slope is equal to rise over run. So I can just pick another point on the graph where it falls in the middle of the grid lines. So this point right here. So if I go, I'm going to rise from here to here. Well, if this is 100 and this is 200, this is halfway, so it's going to be 150. So if I rise 150 and then I'm going to run 2 of these, well, if I look down here, that represents 2. So, sorry, I'm going to rise 50. And I'm going to run 2. So 50 divided by 2 is 25. So my slope is 25 and my y-intercept is 100. So when I look down here, again, that's going to be represented by D. C equals 25n plus 100. So number 3 says, which of the following shows data from a non-linear relation? So if we look at all of our x, or the left side of our table of values, they're all going up by the same amount. These are all going up by 1s. These are all going up by 5s. These are going up by 2s. And these are going up by 3s. So since to get from each point to each point, it's going up by a constant amount, I can check to see if they're linear by calculating the first differences. So if I calculate the first differences here, remember you always start at the bottom, so -1 minus 2 is -3, 2 minus 5 is -3, and 5 minus 8 is -3. Since these are all a constant value, I know it has to be linear. So then I'll check the next one. So 550 minus 475 is 75 cents. 475 minus $4 is 75 cents. And $4 minus $3.25 is 75 cents. So since these are all a constant value, I know that it has to be linear. Again, 9 minus 8 and 2/3 is a third. 8 and 2/3 minus 8 and 1/3 is a third. And 8 and 1/3 minus 8 is a third. Again, they're all a constant value, so this one would be linear, so I'm going to try this one. So 4 minus 9 is -5. 9 minus 16 is -7. And 16 minus 25 is -9. So since they fail the first difference test, they have to be nonlinear. So in this case, again, the answer is D. And I actually forgot to show you all the work on that, so there you go. These are all a third, and this is -5, -7, and -9. So this one is not linear. Number 4, the table below represents a linear relation. Which equation represents this relation? So I need to know my slope. Well, I can get my slope because it's just the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. So I can pick 2 points. So 15 minus 5 over 1 minus 0, which is equal to 10 over 1, which is 10. And then my y-intercept, well, my y-intercept is always when x is 0, so my y-intercept is 5. So in this case, the answer is C, D equals 10t plus 5. All right, number 5. So here you've been given 4 tables, and you have to show how many of the linear relations have a rate of change of 5. So if it's asking about the rate of change, it's in essence asking about the slope. So we need to calculate the slope for all these. So let's get started. Here, again, if I just do the 2 points, so 90 minus 50 over 8 minus 0 is equal to 90 minus 50 is 40. 40 over 8 is 5. So this one has a slope of 5. If I look at this one, it's going to be 35 minus 30 over 12 minus 10, which is equal to 5 over 2. So this one does not. If I come here and look at the graph, so again, I'm going to do rise over run. So it's going 0, 5, 10. So my rise is 5. And in this case, these are going by 1. So my run is 2. So my slope is 5 over 2. So this one does not. And then this one, because it's a horizontal line, I already know that my slope is 0. So that means that only one of these has a rate of change of 5. Number 6, Jerry has a table of values representing a linear relationship, and 2 of the numbers are hidden behind a ketchup spill. But you know that it's linear. So if we want to figure out what these values are, if we can figure out the slope, we can use the slope to go to our next point. So I'm going to use these 2 points to figure out my slope. So my slope is equal to 18 minus negative 6 over 1 minus negative 2, which is equal to 24 over 3, which is equal to 8 over 1. So every time x goes up by 1, y goes up by 8. So now I can just keep adding 8 to my y because I can see my x is already going up by 1. So negative 6 plus 8 is 2, and 2 plus 8 is 10. So that would be answer C. Number 7, the total cost of yearbooks for a school is made up of a $375 setup fee and $25 for each yearbook purchased. So the $25 is for each yearbook purchased, and it says there's a linear relationship between the total cost and the number of yearbooks purchased. So since this is for each yearbook purchased and it's the number of yearbooks purchased. And then there's this $375 setup fee. So it says, what type of variation is this? And what's the initial value? Well, the $25 is your slope because it is related to how many yearbooks you purchase. So that means there must be a y-intercept of 375. And we all know that if there's a y-intercept, then it has to be partial variation. So it's going to be C, partial variation. Number 8, Alex's distance from home is represented by the equation d equals negative a half t plus 300, where d represents his distance from home in kilometers and t represents time in minutes. And how long will it take Alex to reach a distance of 182 kilometers from home? So all we have to do there is we know that we know 182 kilometers, well, that's the distance, so that has to be d. So we know that d is equal to 182, so we can replace that in the equation. So we have 182 is equal to negative 0.5t plus 300, and then we're just solving an equation. So we're going to subtract 300 from both sides. And when we do that, we have negative 118 is equal to negative a half t. And so now we're going to divide both sides by negative a half. And if we take a look at our calculator here, when I do negative 118 divided by negative 0.5, I get 236. So that's A, 236 minutes. Number 9. Two lines are shown below. Which of the following describes a difference between line 1 and line 2? So they both have the same y-intercept, but we know that line 1 is steeper than line 2. So in this case, we know that they both have the same initial cost, so A and B will not work. And we know that line 1 is steeper, and so we know that if it's steeper, it has to have a greater rate of change. So line 1 has a greater rate of change. So the next one, number 10, says to sketch the graph of the line that contains the point -1, 5, and that has a slope of -3/4. So the first thing I want to do is to draw my grid. So this is the y-axis, so I have to make sure I label it as y. And this is the x-axis. So I'm going to label it as x. So don't forget to label your axes. And then you have to tell me what some of these numbers are. So this could be 2, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And going this way, 2, 4, -2, -4. So I'm starting at the point -1, 5. So I go here to -1 and up to 5, which means that my point is going to be right there. Here, let me draw that with a different color. Right there, -1, 5. And it has a slope of -3, 4. Well, that means that my rise is -3 and my run is 4. So I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can draw a dot. And then I can go down 1, 2, 3, and then I can go to the right. And so with the way that I drew my grid, it's fine. I am just going to use these 2 points. My goodness. And my line would look like this. And then I am done. So the last thing in knowledge and understanding is to determine the equation of a line that passes through these 2 points. So we're just going to create the slope. So my slope is the change in the y's over the change in my x's. So it's always xy and xy. So I'm going to start with this point. So it's going to be -1 minus, and then it's -10, so let's put that in brackets. And then 8 minus -4. So when I look at my coordinate pair, -1, 8, -1, 8, -10, -4, -10, -4. So -1 minus -10 is 9, and 8 minus -4 is 12, and so that reduces to 3/4. So now I need to figure out the y-intercept. So to calculate my y-intercept, I can use either point. So I'm going to use this one. So I know y equals mx plus b. So y is -1. M is 3/4. X is 8 plus b. So I know that -1 is equal to 3 times 8 is 24, divided by 4 is 6, plus b. And so to isolate b, I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So I have -7 is equal to b. And so now I know that y is equal to 3/4 x minus 7. So that's the knowledge and understanding section done, and I will continue the application section on another video.